in heaven. Theocratic bands with the Christian Whistleblower. Do some of our most common group activities here on earth put us in Congress with warring parties in the heavenlies? I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. I'll be right back with more. Hello, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, your Christian Whistleblower. Welcome to the Christian Whistleblower NCK Jeff Daugherty Show YouTube channel. And we're looking at something today in our continuing series on War in Heaven, the book by Kyle Griffith, which is now out of print and can't tell you how to get a hold of it. But we're looking at one of the more remarkable and one of the more frightening, if you will, aspects of the War in Heaven. Does our normal, or do some of our most normal group activities here on earth put us in Congress or in union with or working with warring bands within the heavenlies? War in Heaven, Theocratic bands with me, yours truly, Jeff Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. I hope that you'll like, share, and subscribe to this channel while you are here. So let's take a look now into the text of the book, War in Heaven by Kyle Griffith. And this is chapter 11, Theocratic Bands. It's in a Q&A format. He's queuing the entities that are channeling this for him. And you know how I feel about channeling entities. And the A's are their answers. So Griffith says, tell me about the theocrats and how they operate. Now, theocrats are the bad guys, if you will, the ones that are in opposition to us anyway, in the astral plane. Who were they when they lived on earth? Most notorious tyrants, conquerors, evil religious leaders, black magicians, and criminals have become theocrats after death. But so have some people whom history calls saints or benign geniuses. Power corrupts, and the prospect of achieving immortality corrupts even more. Many people with highly developed souls whose earthly lives are quite ethically lived choose to become theocrats after death. Especially true of people who are religiously devout, found out the real truth about their gods after death. And that's what I'm trying to do, folks. I'm trying to tell you the real awful truth about the things that you've been worshiping and calling gods before you get to the other world and have this stark wake-up call. If these people were too powerful for the theocrats to enslave or devour, some became members of the Invisible College, who are the good guys, or at least the guys working for us against the theocrats in Mr. Griffith's world view. But others become theocrats. The temptation is strong because theocrats have ruled Earth and the astral plane for most of human history. For example, most of the medieval popes and other religious leaders notorious for being cynical and power-hungry are now theocrats. So are many famous occult leaders from Cagliostro down to Aleister Crowley. Now, just to get ourselves into a place where we understand exactly what we're talking about here, of course, Aleister Crowley, the famous occultist, you know him from all of the lore and the fact that he was a very notorious occultic practitioner. And Kyle Griffith is saying that Crowley is now, and his name, I know people say his name's really Crowley. Well, his name's really Crowley, but he wanted you to call him Crowley because it sounds more like holy. True story. And Griffith says that, I'm about to do it, that Crowley is on the astral plane and is a theocrat. And I have had conversations with two shaman, indigenous shaman, that have told me that Crowley is in fact on the astral plane, and he is in fact a rather influential fellow. So it jives with Griffith's statements that Crowley is on the astral plane and is a theocrat. Now, he also mentioned Cagliostro, and many of you don't know who that guy is. He is a kind of a around the time of the American Revolution. He was a self-styled Alexander Crowley type person as well. So not reading past any words, but getting understanding about what we're talking about. This is the aforementioned Cagliostro. So now we know that this guy is allegedly a figure on the astral plane, a theocrat. I've not dealt with him. And then, of course, Crowley is a figure on the astral plane. So you got Crowley, you got Cagliostro. So there you go. And let's continue on with our study, if that's all right with you. So we're talking about War in the Heavens, Theocratic bands. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. So going back to it, while he was alive, Crowley was very similar to a double agent in espionage. Sometimes he helped us in our battles against the Theocrats. And I know that's hard for some people to understand. And I've even been taken to task for making positive statements regarding Crowley. And I don't really make positive statements regarding Crowley, but I make positive statements regarding some of the technology, the spiritual technology, that Crowley, if not pioneered, at least made known to the masses. Now, Crowley was a guy that did help break people out of the dominant Christian paradigm. Crowley was a guy that helped people to start thinking for themselves in many instances. Crowley popularized a saying that is much misunderstood. Do what thou wilt, that is the sum of the law. And of course it's being bastardized, and most people are saying, oh, it means do whatever you want, who cares what anybody. The saying actually means that take care of your own business and let everybody else take care of their own business. That's the whole of the law. It was really a take on the Christ saying, love yourself, love your neighbor as yourself. This is the whole of the law. That's what Crowley was trying to, I guess some would say, liberally borrow, if not plagiarize. And good Crowley, and like you said, there's good Crowley, there's bad Crowley. Good Crowley was saying, hey, worry about your own stuff. Don't worry about other people's stuff. He was really kind of saying be excellent to each other. Now, how about that for a mind? Aleister Crowley saying be excellent to each other, but he really was. So sometimes he helped in our battles, and this is a member of the Invisible College, remember the good guys, and the astral plane working for us, quote unquote. Crowley helped them in their battles against the Theocrats, but other times he worked for the Theocrats. I mean, Crowley had a lot of dark messaging and ritual activity as regards, children and other things. So yes, but the point here being that the egotism of Crowley indicates a theocratic personality type and proves that Crowley had been a theocratic spirit between lives many times before. Now that's interesting, because if Crowley, it makes sense that people that are that way tend to be that way because they've been that way before. Very, very interesting. And right now, and I have confirmed this independently through a couple of other shaman, right now Crowley is working with various theocrats of an occultic persuasion, trying to turn some of the occult groups he founded into cults based on his worship, which is completely understandable if you understand Crowley. And he talked frequently about doing this during his life. So now he's in a position to put it into practice. So Crowley is quite likely a theocratic spirit on the astral plane. So it's not necessarily black and white, because there can be, again, you can pick out the bones and eat the meat, or pick out the good vegetables and throw away the clippings. So Griffith says this makes the war in heaven sound like the Allies against the Nazis. And these entities make a tremendous statement. It's all politics. Both sides are working in their own interest. And I have no doubt about that. If there is a battle in the heavenlies on the astral plane, which I am increasingly convinced that there is, there's no doubt to me that both sides, whether it be a side working for us and a side working against us as humans, both sides are in it for their own intention. They have their own skin in the game, and they're not just here to help us. They may, the Invisible College, help us because it serves their purpose to do so, but they did not come here just to help us. And if you are one of these people that believe that there are astral beings up there with nothing other to do and for no other purpose but to help you develop spiritually, that is the height of naivete. That being said, there might actually be 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, but you're talking about 99.99999999999% of the beings up there. They're not there to further your spiritual development. They're there to further their continued life. So the important thing is that the self-interest of the Invisible College and of living people is the same. We acknowledge, and this is interesting, the Invisible College, the quote-unquote good guys, say, hey, we're part of the same human race as you. They try to say, hey, we're just like you guys, which can be a very coercive tactic. The Theocrats are trying to become literally superhuman. So you got this us versus them up there, which makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So even though the Invisible College has given us a lot of great information, I'm not convinced that they're just for us. And even they say that they're not. So I still take all the things they say with a grain of salt, especially that, hey, the only way to keep going is to keep reincarnating, because I think that's a lie, quite frankly. So the time-honored goal of many occultists merging with a godlike being is evil. That trying to do this turns people into theocratic spirits who literally eat souls. Well, he says most of the theocrats are insane. And the bigger and older they are, the crazier they are. Many theocrats do irrational and self-destructive things, and most of them eventually become so insane that other theocrats destroy them. So the rationale is, if you haven't been following the series, that when a spirit goes into the astral plane and doesn't want to reincarnate in the human plane, it gathers energy to itself, and it becomes what Griffith calls a theocrat. And it vampirizes energy from people, and mainly it vampirizes other spirits on the astral plane. And over time, it still can't meet its nutritional needs or its needs for sustenance, and it becomes weak, broken down, insane, until the point where it loses control, and it, in turn, gets cannibalized by other theocrats. So his idea is that theocrats cannot remain forever on the astral plane because they can't get enough energy even by mass vampirism. And to that point, the next question, theocrats aren't really immortal? Most of them are not, they say. They have the potential to be, but only by properly controlling energies they assimilate. And few of them have the knowledge to do this. There's some very old, very large, very stable theocrats in the astral plane who do seem to have this knowledge, but they don't cause much trouble. They feed themselves by stealing spirits from other theocracies that don't work directly with living people, so we don't worry about them much. It's the younger theocrats that cause the most trouble, both for the Invisible College and for living people. Now that's fascinating. So you've got some old gods up there that have perfected the siphoning of energy from other spirits, and they just kind of chill out on their own. It's these younger ones. And it's interesting because I had a dive with great white sharks. I dove for a week with great white sharks. And the older great whites, they didn't bother you at all. The only time I felt in danger was by these young, those 10-footers, 12-footers. And they seemed to be, if I wasn't in a cage, I was never out of a cage with a little one for obvious reasons. If you're in the cage, they don't like you. And it's an analogy between the older souls and the younger souls, then they really are all great white sharks. And they all will eat you. So, theocrats enslave other spirits to provide psychic energy, as slaves or employees on Earth provide physical labor. And do you really think there's any doubt that the labor system on this planet is being set up to prepare us for just such a scenario? I mean, any of you that work for a major company or even a minor company, a small business, if you're working on an hourly salary or even if you're working on some commission, if you sit down and put pencil to paper, very rarely are you given an equitable share of the profit. And this has been a reason for me to quit many a job, because when I used to work in sales, I would, get commission, and if I wasn't getting what I felt to be an equitable slice of the profit of the company, I would not lend my service to them. And I think that that mindset is what began to get me ready to be where I am today, because you are allowing yourself really to be enslaved to what we would call theocratic type entities here on the earth. You're allowing yourself to, your life to be stolen, your energy to be stolen, your intention to be stolen, while you grind at the mill for somebody else to build their dreams. They're making billions and you're making 1,000 a week. What's up with that? So, and this is interesting. Theocratic bands can range from a couple of dozen to several thousand, with the average in the low hundreds. And as soon as I heard that, it struck me that's exact same numerical breakdown as churches. Churches can contain from a couple dozen spirits, been there, done that, to several thousand, been there, done that, with the average in the low hundreds. And that's very, very, very true. And paintings and poems that describe heaven containing millions of souls are not accurate, they say. The daily activities of a fundamentalist theocratic band organized as heaven are similar to church services such as sects hold on the earth, except that they go on perpetually. The theocrat in charge poses as the Lord God, Yahweh, Jehovah, rat bastard, and subordinate theocrats pose as Christ, angels, apostles, and so forth. God quotes the same Bible, preaches the same sermon as the preachers did in the same sect on earth, and the congregation joins in singing the same sins. Dead fundamentalists even find out they have to confess their sins and receive divine forgiveness because they're still capable of thinking as rebellious and impure thoughts. Of course, they're in constant direct telepathic contact with God, so the process is simple and automatic, and it is, you can see, sucking of energy. Christians in heaven are kept in a state of religious ecstasy, which activates their psychic powers. The theocratic leaders then channel this energy to perform whatever functions they consider necessary. It's just like the Matrix. It's just like you working here on earth. Most of the activities have to do with the survival of the band and of the theocratic dictator posing as God. So the band recruits new members from among the recently deceased, steals souls from other bands, and fights to keep spirits like us and people like me and you from liberating members of the band and so on. So I don't know if you caught all that, but there's a war going on in heaven. And in that war on heaven, you've got people like Crowley, like Cagliostro, that were notorious on earth, but they have organized themselves into theocratic bands in heaven. And in heaven, oh, like this guy, he is leading a theocratic band here on earth. And these theocratic bands range from the size of several dozen or a couple dozen small churches all the way up to, ta-da, the mega churches. This is what you see is a earthly manifestation of a theocratic band worshiping this guy, building up this guy, enriching this guy, empowering this guy, while this guy up here, this guy will never ever see him, will never ever speak to him, will never ever shake his hand, and will never ever be there. If that guy wants to call somebody at 2 in the morning because he's having trouble with a spiritual entity, what does he do? I guarantee you, he don't have his phone number. This is how theocratic bands work. From large to small, and this guy is just the same as these guys were and are. That's how war in heaven works. And that's how our earthly ideas and structures are set up to mirror it and to prepare us for it. That gives you a different focus on the Sunday go-to meeting, doesn't it? And check this out. This is what I was just saying. Every theocratic band has a working relationship with a group of living people, often a religious congregation. Also, occult and political groups are also used. Now, more and more, theocratic bands are controlling groups of people whose common interest is music, sports, or something else centered around the electronic media. Traditionally, the majority of theocrats hung around places of worship, but now you can find them just about any place that crowds gather. Wow. Are you getting this? It's very, very tremendous. So if we carefully examine and understand what's going on here, scenarios like this, I mean, the theocrats, those entities that seek to control us and steal our energy, have expanded their domain to places like this. You can see that's probably a rock concert, or maybe it's a WWE, wrestling thing. But it doesn't just have to be in church anymore where you can be vampirized and where you can be part of a theocratic band. I mean, don't tell me that the WWE doesn't have theocratic bands, and don't tell me that there's not theocratic bands for, it's been a while since I've WWE'd, so don't tell me there's not theocratic bands for HBK, the Heartbreak Kid. Don't tell me there's not theocratic bands for Triple H, or for Chris Jericho, or for Randy Orton, or for The Rock, or for the Hulkster. I know he's been gone, but you can see what I'm talking about. And U2, and everything from U2 to Marilyn Manson to, somebody sent me something about Creed today, and it was an interesting song. So all of these things can have their own theocratic bands, and in fact, there are astral bands in heaven where it's like you can go live with Elvis. You can go live with Jim Morrison. You can go live with, Kurt Cobain, and you can probably go live with Beethoven. Roll over. So these rock concerts, WWE type things, and I would imagine even cultured theocratic bands like opera and the orchestra, the symphony, are also organized in the heavens, probably by a lot of atheists. Not that everybody that goes to the orchestra is atheist, but you can see what I'm shooting at there. So you've got these type of theocratic bands from, rock concert type things. Oh! And I picked Obama, but it could have easily been Trump or Hillary or anyone else. But political rallies, tremendous energy in these political rallies, right? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. And I mean, this is the man himself, right? Gives you something to think about. Oh, man. The Raiders. And I picked the Raiders because they have one of the more enthusiastic fan base. I could have picked the Patriots. I could have picked the Boston Red Sox, the Yankees, the who just won the NBA title, the Warriors, Golden State. So all of these things are theocratic bands. And this is just on a personal note because it's something that I don't get a whole lot of things right. So every now and then I do like to pat myself on the back when I do get something right. And over the years, I used to be a huge Christian, right? Used to be a huge follower of some of the big evangelists. And you don't think there's a Joel Osteen theocracy? You're crazy. You don't think there's a Kenneth Copeland theocracy? You're crazy. You don't think there's an Oprah theocracy? You're nuts. An Ellen theocracy? You're nuts. There is. Make America Great Again theocracy? Got one. I'm with her theocracy? Got one. There's even probably a goofy George W. Bush theocracy out there somewhere. But since I came out, and I was a huge evangelist fan, I was a huge sports fan. I mean, I was the guy, standing up in the stands yelling and hollering and screaming, and I mean, really into it. Big music listener, big U2 fan, and Elvis, and country music, big time, man. And what I didn't realize until I started thinking about this and studying this was, when I came out of the Christianity, when I came out of the evangelist, I also, to a great degree, came out of being a huge sports fan. Now, I still do like hockey. I'll still watch some hockey. But I'm not like I was before, nowhere near. I don't listen to music very much. And that came to my mind when I stumbled across Grace Vanderwall. And I've got a couple of really nice videos out about her. I think she's an angel of ascension and has given us a shot. So you might want to check those out for sure. But I don't listen to the music anymore. I remember going to a U2 concert, and I could see how this can really tie us into a theocratic band. And that doesn't mean, band on the run, but there's another one, McCartney, Beatles. I imagine there might even be, could there be a coast-to-coast AM theocratic band out there? There's an Arbel one. And I respected Art. I respect George, so I'm not a battler in that war. So, does that mean you should never listen to music? Does that mean you should never go to a political event? Does that mean that you should never be watching sports? He deals with this, and I think he may deal with it coming right up, so we'll let him talk about it. So, this does make more sense than anything I've ever heard about the astral plane. It really does. The astral plane's not a condition, it's a place. A spirit on the astral plane is in the condition of not being bound to physical matter through the silver cord. The earth is the surface of the planet Earth as you perceive it. The astral plane is the same place as we perceive with our psychic senses. The theocrats and all spirits live in the same world that we do as people. They're around us all the time, and if you enter the correct state of consciousness or the correct frequency, you can perceive them directly. So the idea here is not to be, you can do these things that we've talked about, but keep your wits about you. Don't get carried away into the powerful juju. Don't get swept away where you're like I was, screaming and hollering at the referees and screaming yourself hoarse. Don't get swept away. You can enjoy some stuff. And the same thing with movies and television. Don't get swept away by it. Keep your wits about you. Try, remember who you are, remember what you are, and keep your wits about you. So to get back to theocrats, then, every religious congregation has its own individual god. Yes, they're like hierarchies on the astral plane that work just like hierarchies on the earth. Each Christian congregation has a theocrat who claims to be an angel or a saint or something in charge of it. The theocratic equivalent of the Pope out there is somewhere claiming to be God himself. Yes. There's many gods. The theocrats who communicate telepathically to individual Christians when they pray also call themselves God or Christ or the Holy Spirit because that's what they believe the believers expect. But they also claim to be angels or devils when that seems more appropriate. So how are theocrats organized? Sect, geography, both? Both. Folks, there's big gods, there's little gods, and when you're praying, this is why, I've taken a lot of heat by, Jeff, why do you make me feel bad about praying? Why should I not pray? And I've had people say, well, I want to hear from God. I want God to answer me. Well, this is what you're getting. The true deity, the true divinity, the true inexpressible ones have given you the spark of divinity, and they expect you to learn to grow into your own ways of knowing and being. They expect you to trust your connection with the Spirit that's in you. They don't expect you to be sitting there on your knees with your head bowed and eyes closed asking for answers. You can do that, but here we go. I can see the hate mail coming. But when you're sitting there, heads bowed, eyes closed, on your knees, asking for answers, the answers you get are not from the inexpressible ones. The answers you get are not from Source. The answers you get are not from divinity. They're from a theocratic entity. There's dead Christians who think they're in heaven, sitting around the throne of Jehovah, eternally singing his praises, when they're really just his slaves and his dinner. Now this gives you an understanding of, a real understanding of communion. In heaven, it's still communion, but it's you are the bread. You are the wine. They spent you all this time on earth treating you, teaching you, training you to eat the bread and drink the wine and make it normal, make it holy. Because once you get to the astral plane, my brother, my sister, they're eating your body. They're drinking your blood. You become dinner. There's a terrible irony to Christians eating the body of their God during life and then having the process reversed after death. In heaven, the cannibalism is no longer symbolic, it's real. And it's not just the high-level theocrats who participate. All members of a band are offered the host. And who's the host? A rebellious or degenerating member. Not all souls who enter these soul farms can survive. Most souls aren't developed enough to survive, so they end up being food. There's also hell, theocratic bands. Some people will intentionally become Satanists so they can be rulers of one of these. Heavens are more easy to control than hells, so heavens are more common. And they got them for Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Christians. I'm telling you what, man. Now let's close with this. As fantastical belief in organized religion declines in the modern era, theocrats have even devised ways to persuade atheists and agnostics to join. See, this is what I'm talking about. The symphony, the opera. The most common is to invite them to join what appears to be a community of spirits of their previously deceased relatives or friends or some famous people. There's a rock and roll heaven. Elvis, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison. Not only one, but many of them, and the number grows every year. Politicians, movie stars, writers, scientists, fictional characters. There's a Captain Kirk. Soul Farm. Wow. And we're going to stop here and go next time about people that have a point of death, near-death experiences, and get into that whole thing and see how they relate. Whew, is that enough for you on a Sunday afternoon? Powerful stuff. It's not always comfortable to unwind your mind. It's not always comfortable to unindoctrinate yourself, but it sure beats the alternative. It's not always comfortable to be your own guru, guide your own spirit, or master your own ascension, but it's much better than the alternative. Get this together. Get yourself together. Realize you don't have original sin. You got the spark of divinity within. Be excellent to yourself, and that'll help you understand the rest of us so we can all be excellent to each other. Like, subscribe, share, sponsor. See you next time.